The reason everyone's freaking out is that you're being told to. You don't have to. I first and foremost want to thank everyone for such beautiful responses to my plight. And I am here because it's my job. Not so much my job, but my calling, my path. Our lives aren't ones that we need to make a fortune or have a fancy car or, a hot girlfriend or boyfriend or a big house. No, our lives are here to learn. And my biggest crack cocaine or addiction or what you want to call it is to know. Because the one thing I do know is I don't know. And so that drives me forward. And that brings me to people. And the greatest way to learn is through people, through relationships, through connections, through dynamics. And what I went through with John Boy yesterday was the kind of soap opera of that dynamic. And when you are involved with someone, let's say you're married, you have a husband and wife. Husband comes home, he's had a hard day at work, he's got a lot of frustrations. He had to hold it all in at work so he doesn't get fired. He got caught in traffic. He gets home, and his wife says, "Well, how was your day, honey?" And what do you mean by that? And there they go, right? Bottom line is we always need to give everyone some slack. Always think about the other person first. I was just speaking to a really good friend of mine. He's a padre, a chaplain in the military, right? And he was a Green Beret, he was a Special Forces, he was all of that soldier thing, and he got blown up and shot and killed and everything you can imagine, and he kept going back. He's got all kinds of stars and ribbons and you name it. And at a certain point, once he got so blown up, he could only really, he was in rehab and getting better, and he saw all these people suffering. And he realized his real calling was to help the suffering people. So he became a chaplain, right? And he wasn't one of those guys who sat in the back, and he could have been, because he was, had promotion and he had rank and he had lots of ribbons. And, the powers that be would have loved him to be, in the hierarchy of the military chaplain, but he was out in the field. He went to Afghanistan, he went to Iraq, and he got blown up there, and he wasn't even having a gun. He got blown up saving people. And he still went back, and he, did everything he could to help people. And that's why he's such a beautiful guy, because he's a saint, So I call him LG. Well, first of all, he's died as many times, probably more times than I have. But we kind of relate and understand that one. But he was like me. When you're outside the box, it's not that you're never lonely. You're never bored. You're never, self-possessed. But there aren't too many cohorts, comrades out there outside the box, because most people are too scared to get outside that box. Too concerned about their career, too concerned about retirement, I know guys who were in their 20s who were already dead because they were already checking all the boxes off for their retirement so they could get, the most out of it. I never expected to live this long. And because I always was drawn to knowing. And so I was always drawn to life. And I was always drawn to people. And when you live that life, it's not the safest. But anyone who thinks they have a safe life is wrong. Because all those people who never smoked, never drank, lived and die of, rectal cancer and lung cancer, and then goes in the brain and eats every cell of their body because all they considered was being safe and taking, and so of course, the universe is going to chew you up and spit you out. And if you couldn't be there for the other person, so the other day, I came back here because Wednesday, I woke up and there was frost on my porch, and I was like, and my water line is, 2 football fields long on a little black hose, on top of the ground because it's a mountain, it's rocks and trees, and, but I, get the water up there and it comes down and it's fresh and it's great. And I only lived there for the last 20 years, like on weekends in the summertime and when it's beautiful. I did not expect to be there. I had a house down in the Florida Keys. That's where I expected to be, but that was too good. And when I got really sick and lost all my money, to get any help, I had to have nothing. And so, I had to get rid of the school here, and I had to get rid of my little cabin on Grassy Pine. And then last year's hurricane came right up through the Keys and emulsified it, So I got out in the right time. Otherwise, it would have been kindling wood. It is. Anyway, it's probably now being turned into a Holiday Inn. But I, and I don't even own where I live. I have these 3 little places out in the woods in West Virginia, Tennessee, and in North Carolina that are the epitome of Appalachian extreme poverty. The children there have extended bellies like you'd see in Sally Struthers begging you for money for the little children of Africa. Anyway, so I said, so John had been texting me to, please come back. Let's go to California. And I said, and all the times he wanted me to go to California, this was the one time I go, well, that's a good idea. So called him up and said, hey, can you come to that now? And I said, well, I'm 200 miles away. It's going to take me longer than now, but I'll be there. So I showed up, and then you saw what happened. But I got there Thursday, and Friday, we didn't have fireworks, but John was, I'm anxious. I don't know why. It's because you're here. My father, well, But the whole time, I was making him food. I was taking the last $32 I had, buying food for us, and making him real meals, like vegetables and chicken and tofu and spaghetti rather than donuts and whatever he eats. And every time he'd, wow, this is an amazing meal. I love it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so since I have such limited funds, I buy what I'm going to eat that day, right? And I buy the freshest thing, the thing I can afford, things that'll be nutritious, and I eat it for those meals, and then the next day I go buy something else. Or I recycle it the next day and then until I can get off to where I can buy food. Anyway, so I was in the supermarket and I had gotten a bunch of things, and this supermarket hires baggers that are called special people. I don't know what that means. I just call him Bobby. The sweetest of, maybe he's so special because he's so sweet. And all those special people who work there are unbelievably sweet. They don't have a mean bone in their body. People do mean things to them, make jokes about them, and, they just smile. And so he was putting the stuff in the bag, and he put the eggs at the bottom of the bag and started putting heavy cans of canned food on top of the eggs. I said, whoa, what's your name? Bobby? Bobby. Listen, let me show you how this is done. So I packed everything for him. I put the cans in one bag by themselves. I put the eggs in a bag all by themselves. I put the bread in a bag by itself, and the dairy, yogurt and cheese in a bag by themselves, and tied it up and then put it in another bag. So When it's in the car, if it rolls around, the stuff won't fall out of the bag onto the floor or out the door. And I showed him this. And I said, this is how you do it. He goes, I've been working here 2 years. No one has ever showed me how to bag. Thank you so much. I love you. And he gives me a hug for showing him how to bag. And no one showed him how to bag. So he goes, can I help you out in your car? I said, sure. And I'm in the, like go-kart easy chair for buying things, I love that, to be able to be rolling around the supermarket in a lazy boy and have a basket in front of me. So anyway, I'm rolling out and I'm talking to him, and we go past the cashiers, and there is the section of the robot cashiers, which everything's going to be in the supermarket. And within 5 years, no one is going to be working in supermarkets. Even the shelves will be stacked by robots. And there's a supermarket nearby, really fancy, expensive one, and that's what's going down. And anyway, so we're rolling out the door towards my car, and Bobby's talking to me and saying, thank you for showing me how to bag, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, hey, so right, Bob, it's great. I love you, buddy. You're such a happy, you're so good. And as we rolled out the door, there was the robot section, and they have this guy with his little Palm Pilot, and if you have a problem, he pushes the buttons, and right. So he's a big guy. He's maybe 20-something, and he's a bully. And he starts, boy, you're stupid, Bobby. You didn't even know to put, and I just kind of didn't say anything, but I turned the handle, and I went straight for this guy, and like, those things don't go that fast, but I went to as fast as it was going to go, and I'm going to run him over. And he's standing in front of one of the kiosks, and I go bang right into him, and he can't get away because he's got a big gut, and the basket is pushing against his gut. And I said, let me see your palm. Now, I read everything, and so I can read your palms, I can read the bumps on your head, I can read, all the pulses in your body, I can muscle test you, and I can read you like a book. That's why I work for the desperate lawyers, because I could get them on the same page. Anyway, and so one of my little hooks of dealing with people is where I'm waiting online, I'm talking to this person, or I'm dealing with a bureaucrat. I go, let me see your palm. And 99.9% of everybody will put their palm up because I talk about them, and everybody loves to hear people talk good things about them. You're this, you're that, blah, blah, blah. And that's my hook, because I say, everyone's like Mr. Potato Head. There's only 5 types. There's 5 mouths, 5 nose, 5 eyes. So you mix them all together, you get the human race. But there's really very few patterns of the human that you need to read. And as I go through the lineage of these patterns, what I am really good at is looking at your body language. And if I'm hitting the right note, I double down. If I'm not, I kind of tack to another, thing. So I tell this guy, put your hand up. And I go on about how he killed little animals and masturbated over them. And I mean, things that, most people don't want other people to know, especially in public while they're, people at the kiosks, and I'm not whispering it to them. I'm saying, and I'm like telling exactly who and what he is and what he has done. Now, there's only so many patterns. It's not really, and I start with the most freaky one. And if I read your body language saying, okay, that's it. So I just double down on that, and I just go right down on this guy, who he is. And I said, listen, how do I know? Because I watch you all the time. I'm Santa's. And I still have my big beard. I hadn't trimmed up. I am Santa's younger brother. I take care of the naughty and nice list, and I know you're naughty. I'm watching you. And if you say anything to Bobby ever again, I'm coming back. And I'm not going to be in this little go-kart. I'm going to come in with a dump truck and run you over. And he actually, when I back up, ran away. And the woman who was the cashier, who was working with Bobby, kind of looked at me and smiled and like blew me a little kiss. And the manager, and I know the manager, there's like 5 managers, and this guy's the black manager who works harder than any of the other 4 white managers. And he comes over and he says, "I want to thank you for doing that." And I said, "What?" He says, I wanted to do that for the longest of time, but I can't because I'm the manager here and there's a certain protocol and I just can't do it. And he knows certain people, but thank you very, very much. He said, "You want anything? You need anything?" I said, "Maybe I'll come back later." But that's the joy of being a human being. You can interact, intercede, you can make people's lives. And actually, I made that bully's life better because he won't do that. He'll think twice about that, because he will be going, "Is he really watching me?" Because, man, I knew this guy. And so I went there with that. And so that's what my life's about. I constantly do that. I'm not just talking to you guys on the YouTube here. I do this to everyone I meet. And that's why I keep saying, come on, let's get the band on the road, because you won't believe how your life will change, right? And if there's any corporate people out there, put me on television. I'm a great writer. What I do here, storytelling, I can tell stories. And I've had a lot of stories. If you just go, I almost have 200 of those. And so, I'm just laying them down because I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And I know that if this is my little path, because the universe puts me on the path. My father puts me on my path my whole life. So, I'm pushing 70. And if you go back and look at the done where I've shown you my photo albums, I have 100 of those. And so, I've got a lot of life. And people, how can you have done so much? That's one reason I took pictures of the stuff, because people, when I was younger, didn't quite believe my stories and when I was younger, I was always with the Nobel laureate or the Pulitzer Prize winner, who was my friend and my teacher, and they would go, "Yeah, Al did that. Yep, I was right there when he did that. Yep, when the aliens came down and they were looking for us, Al came out under the bush and went over and greeted them and brought them back, and we had a great, But for the person who runs their life on disbelief, you look at the Latin form of that, and disbelief is the disease of the mind. And suspension of disbelief will enable you to heal anything wrong with you. But people go, "Oh no, I'm this, I'm that," and they just dig themselves into a hole. And I keep saying John's the canary in the social coal mine. He represents that to the T. And there's nothing wrong with John. I'm a shrink. I know what the DMS says. I hate assessing people. But John he's not psychotic. He's not this. He's not that. He's just neurotic, which we all are because we live in a neurotic kind of environment. And the only way you can heal yourself with that neuroses is to suspend your disbelief. Anyway, so that's what this little, I'm going to call up a good friend at about 8 p.m., and so I got, I don't know, half an hour, give or take. And she's watching this. Hey, why don't you jump into the chat, girl? Let's see. So, being human. Being human is fun, Being human means you can be intimate. And what does intimate mean? Doesn't mean having sex. Intimate is being close to someone. Being intimate is knowing when someone is not feeling good or not doing good, and you're there to help, because there is no better feeling than to make someone feel better, or to make someone laugh, or make someone go, wow, you made my day. I mean, one reason I read about 20, 30 people's palms, a lot of people, I pay you money for this. I said, well, and this is true. I've learned from many great teachers all of these esoteric skills. And they've all said to me, Al, you can't charge for this. But if people want to give you a gift, that's great. People want to, whatever, that's great. But you can't say, that'll be $19.95, and if you buy it now, you'll get two. No, you can't do that. Now, I can put up a Patreon account once I can figure that out, and you guys can give me a gift. That's okay. But I can't say, hey, if you're going to watch this, you got to pay. No, can't do that. And that is what's wrong with the human race at the moment, is because we monetize everything. I mean, I'm old enough to remember doctors and lawyers who didn't charge people anything. And they, but those people would give them, chickens and cows and milk and eggs and fix their car and mow their lawn. I mean, it's like, when I was a landlord, one of these moments when the universe came together and I was making some good money and I stumbled across some good real estate deals. Real estate is all about timing, buying low, selling high. So there was and there's basically we have a crash economically, because we have the Federal Reserve that designs our economy to bust and boom, because the people who own that make money off that. That's what the stock market is, legalized gambling that's fixed. Anyway, so I just kind of stumbled into the perfect storm, right? Where this guy wanted to really sell his property, couldn't. I stumbled across him, and I knew him pretty well, and I helped his mother and their family get over a problem. And he says, I want to get out of here. It's now or never. And I need X amount of dollars to get out of here. And nobody wants to buy my houses. He had about 5 of these little bungalow kind of cinder block places in a poorish kind of neighborhood. And I said, well, I got that money. He goes, well, I'll sell it to you. Went down the wire, bing, bang, boom, right? So I had 5 little houses, and I took one for myself. And he had, he was trying to sell them, so he had fixed them up. He had put new AC and new plumbing and, sheetrock and cleaned everything. And these things were like, I don't know, 50, 60, 80 years old. And they were worker houses. And he had cleaned them up to be nice little, 2-3 bedroom things with a kitchen and a living room. And most of them had little storagey crawl basements in the dom. But the problem with them, why nobody wanted to buy them, they were in a wetlands, and when it rained really hard, that little, basementy thing would flood, and then it would smell moldy, and that's why he redid everything. He cleaned and washed, and then when he sold it to me, it was like a drought period. So I had it for 3 or 4 years and never really rained, so I didn't have the problem he did. So I, moved into one, put 4 rent signs on the others, and, rented one out, and to a guy who, he was like OG, old gangster, retired gangster, of the, poor people set, not a banker, meaning, I forgot which, I think it was Morgan who said, if you really want to rob a bank, own one. So, he was an OG, and this neighborhood was not the nice. Right next to me was a little strippy mall, and the only thing that was rented in the strippy mall was a tattoo parlor.